Well, this video is going to be the Netacad CCNA Course 1, Chapter 2, Part 1 of 2 for the version 5.1 of the material for this course. My name is Jason Johnson and thank you for watching. If you find the information helpful in this video and you want to be updated on future videos, just click the subscribe button below or the like, and that will keep you updated. If you have any comments or questions, just leave those in the comment box below and I'll try to get back with you on an answer. And let's get started. So for configuring a network operating system, what we're going to cover in this video, these next two videos, is we're going to look at an introduction. We're going to look at the iOS boot camp, and I may mispronounce that from time to time. I'm going to say ISO, or it's the iOS boot camp, and that's the Cisco iOS. We're going to look at basic device configuration and then address schemes, and we'll do a quick follow-up summary. And it's going to be, this video will be in two parts for chapter 2 as we move through this. So for the first part, let's look at the boot camp for the iOS. We're going to look at the purpose of the Cisco iOS. We're going to have a quick level how we access the Cisco iOS, how we navigate the iOS, and the command structure for the iOS. So let's get started here with this. First, we need to take a look at an operating system and what is an operating system. If you're unfamiliar with computing or you're just new to getting into computers, all hardware in the computing world has some type of operating system on it. For humans to be able to interact with the hardware, we need to be able to create that operating system to give it a set of instructions. And those set of instructions are what we call the operating system. And we have at the lowest level, we have our hardware. And that can be anything from a motherboard or devices that are on the hardware, maybe like a CD-ROM, or the hardware that interacts with each other, from the RAM, the random access memory, to the memory, to all of the other devices. That all interacts at the hardware level. And then we have the kernel, and then we have the shell, and on top of that we have the GUI, or the graphical user interface, and the CLI, or the command line interface. So that's what you'll hear if you hear the word CLI. That's the command line interface. That's where we just type in commands into a window. We don't see any type of icons or anything like that. And the GUI is our graphical user interface, and that's where we have icons. We can click on things. We can have drop-down boxes, things like that. The GUI is much easier to work with. But for the Cisco course, you're going to learn most of your command, most of everything that you do with the Cisco devices are through the CLI, so the command line interface. Okay, so the purpose of an operating system. An operating system is to allow us to communicate with the hardware, and that's the basic level of it in a short way to explain it. But PC or personal computing operating systems enable a user to use a mouse, enter text line, view output on a monitor. That's what we do with our computers. The Cisco iOS enables a networking technician to use a keyboard to run command line interface network programs, so we're able to connect into the device and give it commands or update information, extract information, log files, things like that, and we view the output on a monitor. And all networking devices come with their default iOS. So all Cisco devices come with a default iOS on there. And it is possible to upgrade the iOS, and you probably will upgrade devices. Even with a new device that you get from Cisco and purchase it, you're probably going to need to update that operating system, because it's from the time it was created and then put on a shelf somewhere or set in storage and then shipped to you, there's a time delay, and there's been probably updates to that operating system. So even if you get a brand new device and go to install it, you always want to check to make sure that you have the current version of the iOS available to you. So let's look at access. There's a few different ways to access a device. You can get in through the console, and we'll take a look at that from a visual standpoint on there. You can get into the console, you can telnet in, or you can SSH in. Console is probably the most secure because you're directly connecting to the device from a computing device. You usually are going to set up some type of laptop and take it to the server room and connect in with your cables. Telnet is by far the least secure. I would probably never use Telnet myself in a production environment, just because anything sent across a Telnet connection is going to be, if you've got somebody on the same network and they're wire sniffing or they're sniffing those packets going through, and you type in passwords, for example, they can see those because those are unencrypted as they go across the Telnet. And then SSH is a secure shell, and you want to use that if you do have to connect across a network, because it's going to be encrypted, and it does provide you an extra layer of security. It doesn't mean that somebody won't be able to get that packet information and crack it open or be able to hack into it or unencrypt it, but at least it gives you some level of security that's not there with the Telnet. So how do we access through the SSH? We have a program called PuTTY, or P-U-T-T-Y. You can download that off the internet. You can Google that. Just make sure you're getting the right version of it, that you're not getting one that's got some type of malware that you're downloading or something like that. Make sure you're going to the correct website. If you're taking the NetAcad course, you should get with your instructor. The instructor will provide you a link to a safe or semi-safe website or a place to download this. But PuTTY is just a small, and this is on a Windows machine here. This is loaded up, but you can also run that in or your SSH. You can run that in in Linux or the Macintosh system. All of those have some type of SSH or terminal software. And this video is not going to cover how to use PuTTY. I'll probably do another video on how to use PuTTY and install it and get it up and running and how to connect. And I may come back and put a link here on that video, but for now, you know that there's plenty of information out on the internet. It's been around for a long time, and there's plenty of other videos that cover this on there. But we're basically going to use this software to connect through a network or a cable, a direct cable, whether it's either the console or the SSH, into a device. And we would go in with our session, we put in our host name or our IP address, and we put in our port, and we'll be able to go in. Now, TerraTerm is another piece of software that you can use, and TerraTerm uses TCP/IP, and it connects in. It'll do the same thing. It'll use SSH to get in, if we're going to SSH in. And this is, on a Mac system here, they're using a secure CRT. Oh, actually, it's Ubuntu, but they've got, looks like the Mac, or Mac looks like Ubuntu, but they're using the secure CRT software to connect in, and you would just put in your host name there too. So the lesson here is that there are a number of different pieces of software that allow you to either telnet in, which you probably shouldn't be doing, or console in, because even if you connect your console cable in, you're still going to have some type of software to communicate to that device, or whether you're using SSH across the network. So on this, we're going to next take a look on how to navigate the iOS. And as we go through these videos and these PowerPoints here, you're going to see text notes here that say video available. Inside the NetAcad course, you should be able to open up those videos from inside there. So just if you're following along inside your NetAcad course and you're in Chapter 2, there should be links to the video. If you cannot find those in your NetAcad course, then just communicate with your instructor, and they should be able to provide you links to those videos in there. Okay, so a console connection must be established before you can do any type of configuration of a Cisco device. You can boot it up all day long, but you cannot see into that operating system until you do some type of console or SSH to get in there. So after you get consoled in, a network technician navigates through different command modes on the iOS through the command line interface. And depending upon where you are, there's going to be different hierarchy in there, and they're similar for both switches and routers. So that's the good thing. So once you learn how to move around inside the hierarchy, inside of a switch or inside of a router, they're going to be similar on how you move through. And what I mean by hierarchy is when you first log in, you're going to have access to the user exec mode. And in that user exec mode, that's the basic level. That's just where you come in, and you're always at the user exec mode because you will see the greater than sign. And so whether you're in a switch or you're in a router, you're going to see that greater than sign, and that's going to let you know that you are in user exec mode. in a new switch or a new router that hasn't had any types of passwords put in, and you console in, you're just going to come up right to that user exec mode. And then you're going to need to move over into privileged exec mode, and privileged exec mode is going to give you more access to the operating system. It's going to allow you doing monitoring commands, execution of configuration, and do other types of management commands. So there's two different levels there. You have the user exec mode and privileged exec mode, and you do want to know the differences between the two of these. Those are on the test for both the Cisco Academy and for the CCNA. You're going to see questions along those lines. And you just, as you use this operating system, you just need to get comfortable with knowing when you first log in, you hit the user exec mode, you put in your correct commands to then move over into the privileged exec mode. Now, when we go to log in, to configure the device, you must enter the terminal command, configure terminal, or config TER. And I don't have a video. I mean, there's videos available, as it shows down here. There's videos available through the NetAcad course. So, for example, we'll get into the switch config, and we know we're in privileged exec mode because we have the pound sign. The greater than sign is the user exec mode, and the pound sign is the privileged exec mode. So changes that affect the operation of the device as a whole once we get into the privileged exec mode. We can enter sub-configuration modes as well. So we can go into lower levels or higher levels depending on how you look at it. I look at it as lower levels as we move down through the tree. But you have sub-configuration modes. Those are the line configuration mode. That's where we configure lines, and that's the configure lines. And we know we're in privileged exec mode with the pound sign, but we configure lines. And then we have the interface configuration mode, and that's used to configure a switch port or a router network interface. So we can configure the console line, the SSH line, telnet, or aux access, and then we can move over to the port lines where we're going to change our ports around or our network interface, and that would be the config if. So you have config line and config if. And again, just as a visual clue, this is what I try to remember from a visual clue, that I know where I am based upon looking at the iOS, whether I have a greater than sign or a pound sign. I know which where level of the iOS I'm in. So a greater than sign, is exec mode, user exec mode, excuse me, and pound sign is privileged exec mode. And then if we type the disable, we log back out, and then we get back to user exec mode. And then if we type exit, we log back out of the console altogether. So when we're moving between the different versions here, what I'm going to do is open up my packet tracer file here. I'm going to open up my virtual Windows 7 machine here, and I've got packet tracer running. And I'm just going to show you real quickly in packet tracer adding a device on here. So I'm just going to add this router here. Go to my end devices. I'm just going to put a laptop on here, and I'm going to connect in my console cable, and I'm going to connect it to the RS-232. Now, in some of the newer, and we'll look at this a little bit later in the video, some of the newer ones, you'll be using a USB on the laptop side, and then going in using the USB on the router side as well. But for this instance, I'm going to use the RS-232 or the COM port. Most laptops are not going to have that type of COM port anymore. They're going to have a USB port, and so we'd be using that. But in this case, I'm just going to do that, and I'm going to connect into the console. And with Packet Tracer, I can just go directly into the command line here and look at my command line. But I'm just going to show you in the real world, or in a production environment, we would click on the computing device. We would go to the desktop, and we would open up our terminal configuration software. And that's going to be configured at 96. We're just going to leave all this default. I'm going to click OK. And now we have our command line interface. And do we want to continue with the configuration dialog? I'm going to type no, or N for no. And then we are at our basic login, and we are at user exec mode because we have the greater than sign. If I type enable, or EN for short, because you can always shortcut a lot of these commands, I'm then at my privileged exec mode. And so then if I do my config, so if I type in CONF, and I can complete a lot of these with my tab key. If I've typed it in enough to where it's the only command available, I can go configure, and then TER. If I put a $sign in there, it's going to tell me my options. So for example, if I type CON, and you're going to learn this throughout the course, I'm just doing this now so that you see what's happening. So if I type CON and type dollars or question mark, it's going to say I've got two options, configure or connect, and I don't want to connect, so I'm going to type, to make it unique, CONF, type my tab key, TER, that's unique, so I can just tap enter. Type exit to get out of there, or disable. Yeah. Type exit to get out of there, and then I'm totally out. And then I'm back at my user exec mode, and I type enable again to get into my privileged exec mode. And if I type CONF TER and I don't use my tab key, it will also take me into that as well. So that's going to how you move around just to the beginning, getting into your user exec mode and your privileged exec mode. So we have user exec mode and privileged exec mode. You would then go in, you can type interface VLAN 1, which gets you into your interface. Exit always brings you out one level. So it brings you out one level. You can type exit, you can type end, which will take you all the way back to the privileged exec mode area. Or you can do Control Z. So there's different commands there, and you'll memorize those as you go through. You're going to remember that you type EN to get in. When you get into user exec mode, to get into privileged exec mode, you'll just type EN. To configure the terminal, you'll type CONF TER. To go into interface, it would be INTER. And then you can tab and then go to VLAN 1 and so forth. And you'll just learn as you use it more and more that exit takes you back to a certain level, N takes you back to a certain level, and Control Z as well. And there's a video available again inside the Netacad course. You should be able to get that. When we're looking at the structure of the command line, we are typically going to have our prompt, and that's going to be where we have our name, the greater than sign or the pound sign or hashtag for younger users that don't know that that's the pound sign. Then you're going to have your command, and in this case, we're going to look at the ping command, and then you're going to have a space in between there. You have a space, and then you'll have your argument or your keyword. So you're going to have your prompt, and tells you where you are located in the operating system. What command are you going to be putting in? A space in between your command and your keyword or your argument. And in this case, this is our IP protocol, so we're going to ping an IP address in this particular command here. Now, usually with Cisco, these are the conventions that are used. Boldface text indicates commands and keywords that you enter literally as shown. Italics generally indicates that those are the arguments for which you want to supply values in there. Square brackets indicate an optional element. Brackets indicate a required element, something that has to be put in there. And then braces or vertical lines within a square indicates a required choice within an optional element. On the help features inside of the iOS, there are some, and I've already shown you one. So if I want to know, for example, if I put in CL and if I want to know what's available from there, or if I get stuck, if I type CL question mark, that's going to show me, whether I have clear or clock. And let me just move over to that real quick. So if I'm in there, and let me exit back out of there, and then I type CL, and I'm not sure what's available to me, I can just type my question mark, and that's going to let me know that there's two commands available to me, clear or clock. And if I put in CLO and type my question mark, that's going to let me know that there's only one, and that's clock. And if I type tab, that's going to finish it out for me. And of course, that's an incomplete command when I press enter on there. So when we have the question mark, that's going to give us what is available on there. What's available. If we type clock set, so set is the next command on our clock command. So then we put space question mark, and that lets me know what's available to us. So clock set question mark then says that's the command explanation. And then if we did clock set, we put our time in and put another question mark, that lets us know what the next level is. So that's the command explanation with more than one argument or a variable option. So then we know we can put in our clock set 1950 on 25 June 2012. If we put in a command that's incomplete, we're going to get an incomplete command. So as you saw when I just did that with the with mine here. I put in clock and I pressed enter, and I didn't have an argument in there, and it said incomplete command. So that's what's going to happen here. You're going to get an incomplete command on that. So if I do clock set 1950, but I don't have my date, it's going to give me an incomplete command. If I type something in and it doesn't know, if there's more than one choice, it's going to say ambiguous command, and it's going to say we don't know what you want to do. You put C in there, but there's no one single choice that we can put in there because there was two. There was a connect and a clock, if you remember that. And so if we just typed in C, it's going to say it's ambiguous. We don't know what you want to do, so we're not going to do anything. We're just going to give you an error code. And then if we put in something that's invalid, we're going to get a symbol that looks like that. Invalid input detected, and it's going to show you where it is. So it's just not going to leave you hanging out. It's not going to say, hey, that was wrong. It's going to tell you that right there is where your incorrect command is. There are hotkeys and shortcuts. Tab completes the remainder of a non-ambiguous command. So if it knows what it is, it will go ahead and complete it for you of a partially typed command or keyword. Control R redisplays a line. Control R will redisplay a line. So if we're in here and we type Control R, well, it's not going to do it for me because I didn't have a command line. You can use your up command to bring back. See, I'm pushing my up arrow to bring back old commands that I've typed into my history. See, I'm just going up and down and moving through those using my arrow key on my keyboard. Control Z exits the configuration mode and returns to user exec mode. Down arrow allows you to scroll forward through former commands. Up arrow goes backwards through former commands. So the arrow key up and down. Control Shift 6 allows a user to interrupt any type of iOS process. So if you start pinging or using a trace route, and if you're used to ping in the Microsoft world, you'll know that ping only goes for 3 times unless you tell it to do a command line to continue running. But in the Cisco iOS, when you do a ping, it will just continue to run. And if you just have it running and it just keeps going and going and going, you want to break out of that, you do a Control Shift 6. And then Control C aborts the current command and exits the configuration mode. So those are some shortcuts, and you probably want to start memorize those. These are some that you'll just use on a daily basis with the Cisco, and so you probably just want to get familiar enough with these that you memorize them and what they do. Okay, so that was the end of Chapter 2, Part 1. Coming up in Part 2, we'll look at the basic device configuration and address schemes. So if you check down in the lower right-hand corner, after I get this uploaded to YouTube, you will see a link to the Part 2 of Chapter 2. And if this was helpful for you, go ahead and subscribe to my channel, click like, and if you have any questions, just put those down in the comment area, and I will try to get back with you on an answer. And again, my name is Jason Johnson. I hope this was helpful, and hope you have a great day.